Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to webinar number 3. We've got two topics that I love to talk about, marketing and branding today, so hopefully you'll love them as well. Just to make sure, since we had some technical difficulties last week, I just want to make sure that A, everybody can hear me okay, and 2, that we're all looking at the same slide. I have a slide that's coming up right now that says part 1 and the homework assignment. Is that what everybody's seeing? Yep. Okay, perfect. So just a reminder, the competition section from 2 weeks ago is due this week. If you could send it over to me via email, I would greatly appreciate it. And then next homework assignment that's due in 2 weeks is the marketing strategy. It's pages 28 to 47, and if at all possible, if I can have that by August 25th, that would be great. I will give you a little bit of warning. This is the hardest homework week of the entire program. There's a lot of pages, and it requires a lot of thought and some work on your part as far as research goes. So that said, let's get right into it. The most important thing you have to understand about marketing strategy is that there's really 2 types of marketing strategies that businesses utilize. The first one is more of a random approach, and it's kind of like throwing spaghetti on the wall. You kind of have to just try everything and see what sticks. This particular approach tends to be much more scattered and without any direct purpose, and it's also fueled by trends, your professional networks, salespeople that are selling you something, a little bit of fear, and historically has a very poor success rate, typically around 10%. On the other side of the spectrum, there's a focused marketing effort, and those efforts are based on research, have a very clear plan, rely heavily on the execution of the plan that you've developed, has a mechanism for tracking results, and accounts for modifications in the market as you're moving forward. So obviously, I'm the person that believes in that focused marketing plan, and that's what this homework is all about. So when you start to work on your marketing strategy, the very first thing that you have to decide is your business going to sell to consumers, for-profit businesses, not-for-profit organizations, and or government agencies? And there really is no right answer to this particular question. It can be all 4, it can be 1 of the 4, it can be 3 of the 4, or 2 of the 4. You have to decide where 80% of what you think your business is going to come from. And so from a homework assignment perspective, just check the box that's most appropriate. Once you've done that, you're going to start working on something called client profiles. And client profiles are statements about who your customers will be for each of those exchanges. They need to be measurable, include descriptive identifiers, demographic qualifiers, and social generalizations. The measurable information can include anything from geographic locations, genders, home values, home sizes, income, special interests, industries, number of employees, annual revenues, things that would be common denominators for those clients. And for each of those business exchanges, the consumers, for-profits, not-for-profits, and government that you select, you need to develop at least 5 client profiles that describe your customers. So I've given you space in your workbooks to put down the demographic characteristics, as well as the geographic footprint. On the bottom of each of these slides, and I think if I haven't already sent copies of the slides to Jill, I will do so that you have them, are examples of what a client profile would be for that segment. So for consumers, we're looking at possibly families with children ages 3 to 9, living in Saratoga County with an annual household income of $60,000 or more, and an interest in outdoor activities. Now, there are several components of that statement that are measurable. One is the ages of the children, and as a population statistic. The footprint of Saratoga County gives us a defining component for that population statistic. Annual household income is measured by county. And also, believe it or not, there are national statistics that we can apply to regions and relating to special interests, and that would be the outdoor activities. If you're looking to sell directly to other businesses, a good example would be attorneys with less than 5 employees based in Albany County and annual revenues of $500,000 or more. There are several resources that you can search by business type with a lot of qualifiers. Some of the qualifiers include employees, location, and annual revenues. And so we can sort out the firms that actually meet those qualifiers and give you not only a number, but a lead list. If you're selling to nonprofits, you might be looking at organizations in Albany County with 10+ employees and the focus of their social mission for children's causes. Those are also things that are measurable based on different databases. And then with the government, a good example of a client profile would be government agencies with more than 1,000 employees in Albany County that have utilized outside contractor services in IT in the last year. And I'm getting a notification that there's some technical problems. Is that correct?
We are having some problems. People are calling in and saying they're having trouble getting in. Who has contacted you, Kate?
I just had a window pop up that there was a technical issue.
Okay, I didn't see that window, but we did just get a phone call from someone who's trying to connect.
Okay.
Let's hopefully he'll be able to get in.
Perfect. Is everybody else okay? Holler if there's a problem.
Is everybody hearing okay? Or if there's any issue, you can text me, or you can send an email to Caitlin Connolly, caitlin@nyrehab.org.
Okay, so we're going to move forward. I'm going to assume everybody can see okay. Once you have your client profiles, then you need to do some research on those client profiles. There are multiple sources of research out there that are free, and those are the ones that I'm going to encourage you to utilize instead of paying for market research. And if you have some time that you can play with these resources and really get comfortable with them, they should also be of a benefit to your nonprofit organizations as well. Census.gov is really a warehouse of tremendous demographic data, economic data, housing data. They have many tools, including American Fact Finder, and they have a lot of search engines so that you can pull the data that you need. A little used research tool is called Reference USA. It is only and exclusively available through libraries. I access that database through the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. It is free, and the data on there is very similar to Dun & Bradstreet. You can search by lifestyle interests. You can search a lot of information on individual companies. It's a great sales tool. It's also a great marketing data tool. And since I've already mentioned libraries, I'm going to mention it again. Just about every library in this market and in most markets have what are called research librarians. And the research librarians are trained and skilled in ferreting data and information based on what their customers need. So if you're looking for some specific information or a study on any type of consumer habit, I strongly recommend going to the library, talking to your research librarian, and asking them for assistance. You would be amazed at some of the things that they can retrieve for you. Also, libraries nowadays have most of their data research portals available online. So not only search your own, but search others to see what's available, and if necessary, get library cards at multiple libraries if you can. Also available to everybody participating in this program is SBDC Market Research. So we have a market research network of 5 full-time market research librarians. So you give me the questions, I will pass them on to them. They ferret out the information and give it back to me, and then I can forward it on to you. The caveat to that market research is that I have to have your questions no later than end of business Wednesday in order to turn the information around in time for you to turn in the homework on time. So as long as I receive your request by next Wednesday, we should be all set. You can send them in to me via email, or you can call me and we can talk about what some of your market research needs may be. Most importantly, when it comes to the market research, we need for each of the business exchanges that you're participating in, again, consumers, for-profits, not-for-profits, and government, based on the customer profile, that's the customer segment, you can kind of shorten it to have it fit in the space, the population of that demographic, of that client profile. So if it's families ages 3 to 9 in Saratoga County with a household income of $60,000 or more and an interest in outdoor activities, I need to know exactly how many people fit that profile. And if you're not sure of how to find that information, where to find that information, or need help finding that information, as long as you ask me by next Wednesday, I will be able to help you with that. We then take the number of competitors that are competing for that same customer. And the number of competitors may change based on the geographic footprint of that profile. And so you put that number in there, and then you divide the demographic population by the number of competitors, and that will give you a relatively accurate fair share of market value for that client profile. So although there may be 10,000 people that meet a demographic population, if you have 10,000 competitors, you're only going to have one possible customer in a fair share world. And when we're looking at new businesses, we definitely take a look at the fair share. And this market research will help us to identify whether or not your concepts are viable as is, or if they need to be modified. So you're going to do this for each of the business exchanges that you have selected in the very first page of your homework assignment. Are there any questions on client profiles or the market research? Okay. So moving forward, for going back to that first homework assignment where you had all of your product categories and all of your service categories, you then need to identify what the average consumer buying patterns are for that product or service. And for some of you, it's going to be the same all the way across the boards. For others of you that have multiple arms to the businesses that you're developing, you may have different purchase frequencies. So the purchase frequency is how frequently your customers are going to buy the product. You know, think of your own consumer habits. We buy groceries every week. We buy clothing typically quarterly or seasonally. We buy cars every 3 to 5 years. We buy homes every 15 to 20 years. The best way to get that information for your product or service is going to be by visiting an industry association website related to what you're selling. And again, this is something that I can help you with as long as you let me know far enough in advance. The same industry sites will also have research on average items per purchase. So, you know, when someone goes shopping for clothing, how many items do they buy per trip on average, as well as the average purchase price. So for those of you that are selling a physical product, you're going to do it for the products. And those of you that are selling services are going to do it for the services. Some of you have both, so you'll have to do it twice. You're also going to need to take a look at some of the market and industry standards for what it is you're selling. Again, the industry association websites have tremendous research pools that you can access usually online for what's standard. Is there a standard product quality? Is there a standard manufacturing, distribution? What's happening in your industry? It's also important to take a look at some of the more recent technology impacts on your industry and what those technology impacts have had on how you do business. So if you think about it, 5 years ago, if you went to a farmer's market, cash was king and that's how everybody was paying for everything. Now you can't go to a farmer's market without paying by credit card because everybody's using the Square options and actually very fewer vendors are accepting cash nowadays. So by looking at what the more recent technology impacts have been on your industry and what's on the horizon, you'll be better positioned to make sure that you aren't left behind because of technology. The economic climate, so based on your location, what's happening in your economy? New York is a very diverse state, and we have many different types of economic climates. For those of us in the Capital District, things are pretty good here right now, but there are other areas where things are a little bit stagnant or still declining. What is the economic climate for your market? Also, what are the competitive trends? What's happening with competitors in your industry in your market? Are they opening like crazy, or are they closing like crazy, or are things staying status quo? You'll need to identify the accepted points of sale. There's in-person location, web store, special events, telephone, mobile apps nowadays, or other mechanisms. Check any and all that apply. And then you also need to know your particular niche. What's going to be unique about your business in comparison to the competition in the market? Why are people going to want to do business with you instead of everybody else? And for those of you that are converting workshops, remember one of your primary niche and competitive advantages was you were able to do things at a lower price, especially due to the type of labor and subsidies that you had. That's not going to exist in these models. So what is it unique from a customer service, a branding, a product? What's unique about you? And then we also take a look at, are there any special abilities, strengths that your business is going to offer customers in the market? That's, you know, another big component about niche development. Once you've identified your niche, then you need to identify where you're going to fall on the price volume service matrix. And so for those of you that haven't seen this before, this matrix applies to every industry, every business. And there are some businesses that can fool you into thinking they're somewhere else on the matrix, but you know, reality is they are where they are. On one side of the spectrum, you have the businesses that are low price. They tend to have low product quality, low service quality, and their model is based on a high volume of sales. So from a retail perspective, think of the Walmarts of the world. And from a professional services, think of bookkeepers. On the other end of the spectrum are businesses that have high prices, high product quality, high service quality, and those businesses will do a lower volume of sales. On the retail side of things, that's your Nordstroms. And from a professional services component, that would be a CPA. Where is your business going to fall? Are you going to be on either end of the spectrum or somewhere in the middle? So for the homework assignment piece of it, what you're going to need to do is check off where you plan on falling on that matrix, high, mid, or low. Just please make sure that other than the mid, if you have high pricing, you have low sales volume. If you have high sales volume, you have low pricing.
Kate?
Yes.
If we could just backtrack a minute.
Sure.
One more behind that, actually. When we're talking about the niche development, though we won't technically be workshops, there are, if it works like it does now, you could still have state contracts because there are people who have the preferred source contracts that are not work centers, but they employ people for that contract who are disabled.
Correct.
If that still is in existence, how does that affect this?
That's a competitive advantage, and that's a niche piece.
Okay.
So the fact that you're able to get preferred source contractor status is a huge deal in government contracting.
Right. And we don't know that that certainly will exist, but there has been nothing that said that it won't.
Well, I would have a tendency to believe that that will not change. And part of the reason why that won't
the only
change.
Thing that might change. Well, the only thing that might change on it is, depending on your contract, you wouldn't have any ability to pay sub-minimum wage.
Correct.
But as long as that works in your contract, and I know that there are a great many where it does, that shouldn't be an issue.
You are 100% correct on that. Preferred sourcing, because of the other types of qualified businesses that are under preferred sourcing, include corrections, there's centers for the disabled, and I think there are 3 or 4 other classifications. I just don't have them in front of me. That's not going to go away in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. So just to make sure, when it comes to the price volume service matrix, just make sure that you know, are you the Nordstrom's or the Walmart or the Target or a little bit of an extreme on either side? If you're not sure where you should fall, give me a call or send me an email and I'll help guide you through that. Once you've kind of done your initial research on the marketing strategy, the next step is to actually identify what tactics you're going to utilize in marketing and advertising your business. So I have provided a, check all that apply kind of system for the most common types of marketing in small businesses. If there's something that you plan on doing that's not on there, by all means, add it. And once you check them all off, you're going to need to develop a budget for each one of them. What I recommend doing is leaving your budget information blank until you fill in the following pages. So if television advertising is one of your tactics, I'll need to know what station, the length of the ad, how frequently it's going to air, so I can determine the monthly expense. And then we also need to know any production costs to produce that television ad. If you're doing print advertising, we need to know what publications, the size of the ad, the frequency of the advertisements, and your monthly projected expense, as well as any production costs and graphic design to have the ad designed for you. If you're doing radio station advertising, very similar to TV, station, ad length, frequency, and monthly expense, as well as production costs to have the initial ad produced. For those of you that plan on doing direct mail, the type of mailer, the number of items to be distributed, the frequency that you plan on sending it out, your printing expense, and your postage expense. Most of you plan on having a website of some kind for the business. It may be a component of your existing website with just add-ons, but we need to know the type of website, the graphic design fees, the web design fees, and a total expense. We also need to know the type of maintenance that needs to be performed. Is it a component of search engine optimization, the frequency that the maintenance will be done, and the expense for that? If you're going to do internet display advertising, I need to know what sites you plan on having those display ads, the size, the frequency, and the monthly expense. If you're doing internet interactive A good example of that would be a pop-up video that appears when you go to certain sites. I need to know what site, if you have a budget per action per month, what the actual budget is going to be, and then your monthly expense. There's pay-per-click advertising, and if you're doing that, we need to know what website, what your budget clicks per month is, how many of them you actually are going to budget for, what the budget price is per click, and the monthly expense. We've provided space for all of the social medias. For all of them, we're going to need that you plan on participating in for marketing, what the activity is going to be, what the call to action is going to be, and how frequently you're going to run that marketing tactic. So you'll need to do that for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, there's YouTube and LinkedIn. And then there might be something else that I haven't thought of as far as social media goes. If you plan on using email as a component to your marketing campaign, we need to know the type of email blast that you plan on sending. Is it a newsletter, a coupon? What type is it? What is the call to action? And the frequency. If you're attending networking events, what's the name of the organization that's hosting the event, the type of event that you're attending, as well as the monthly expense. If you're doing direct sales, the market categories that you plan on going after, how many sales calls are planned per month, and if there's any expenses for those sales calls, either in printed materials or travel. If you're participating in any professional organizations from a marketing perspective, typically chambers of commerce and other community organizations, we need to know which organization, what your monthly obligations are as a member of that organization, if there's annual dues and monthly expenses. If you're going to use public relations, which I hope everyone does, the type of activity that you plan on employing, the call to action, and the frequency. Collateral materials are everything from printed materials to cups with your logo on it. We need to know what you're going to be purchasing or printing, how many, what the cost per item is for an expense. And then you're going to take all that information and you're going to go backwards and fill in the budget numbers. And for those of you that haven't heard of the terms call to action, in a marketing component, call to action is what are you going to put in your advertisement, your post, the information you're distributing out that is going to result in an action by the viewer, right? So if it's an email blast, what are you going to put in there to encourage the reader of the email blast to click through to your website and purchase something, to visit your store, to visit your cafe, to visit your business, to pick up the phone and make a phone call? The whole point of marketing is to result in an action of the consumer. So you need to make sure that there's some type of call to action in all of these marketing tactics that has a result, or at least has a goal result. Okay, have I lost anybody? Perfect. So that's your homework for the next 2 weeks. I apologize that it's so long, but it's kind of important to keep it all together. And if there aren't any questions, we're going to move forward on to branding. Okay. So branding is one of the things that I love to talk about. And one of the reasons why I love to talk about it is it involves a great deal of creativity. It's fun. And it gives you a sense of what other people are doing. And I've kind of been following the concept of branding for the last 10 years. It's relatively new as a hot button in small business. It's been a hot button item for about the last 4 or 5 years. And fortunately, I've been able to do a lot of research on the concept. So we're going to start by talking about the different types of brands that exist and the differences between brands that are effective and ineffective. We'll talk a little bit about the 3 Ps and an S of building a brand so that you have some help in guiding you to build your own, and the brand associations that you need to be aware of from a consistency standpoint. So that said, there are 3 different types of brands. There's the personal brand, a brand for an individual product or service, and then there's also corporate brands. And as small businesses, what you have to decide is which brand is going to be most appropriate for what your plans are. Some of you may have multiples, some of you may have just one. Again, there is no right answer that's going to fit every one of you. Personal brands are actually the brand of a person associated with a series of products or services. So these are the 4 most visible brands in the country right now. You have Rachel Ray, that all-American girl. She's known for cookbooks, television shows, Food Network, and her talk show. She has complete lines of cookware and kitchen products. She has pet products. She's done an amazing job with developing her brand. And the #1 word that's associated with Rachel Ray is wholesome. Next up is Martha Stewart. I think she's somebody we've all heard about. She stands for all things elegant. And underneath her brand, she sells cookbooks, how-to books, magazines. She has multiple television shows on multiple channels. She has entire lines of kitchen and cookware products, household decorative products, and now organizational products. I saw the other day that she also now has a pet food line. Donald Trump is known as the "you're fired" guy. He's changing that in recent weeks with his political campaign. He has had multiple television shows. He has a tremendous amount of real estate, hotels, resorts, and golf courses. He has men's apparel lines and men's fragrance lines as well. And last but not least is Oprah Winfrey. She is known as the queen of all media, and she's grown her empire from a small talk show to multiple television shows. She has magazines and launched a television network that achieved profitability last year, 4 years ahead of projection schedules. And to give you an idea of the power of some of these personal brands, if you've ever heard of Jessica Simpson, who was kind of a pop star 10 years ago, I guess, her lifestyle and clothing and shoe line brands generated $3.6 billion in revenues last year on a global scale. And she's not even in the top 5. So that is the power of those personal brands. There are a large number of consumers, both in the United States and globally, that will buy something just because it's endorsed or produced by a specific individual. And that's what personal brands stand for. Product and service brands are brands that are tied to very particular products. So whether it's a bottle of detergent, a pen, a TV station, something that you drink, whiteout, those are the brands. The problem with some product and service brands is that as they become successful, they become the common vernacular of the entire product line regardless of producer. Some examples of that are, Band-Aids. Whether you're buying Band-Aid or somebody else's, you refer to it culturally as a Band-Aid. We use the word Kleenex, which is the brand, instead of the product description, which is facial tissue. And when that happens, you actually run the risk of losing your trademark. Because when it becomes common vernacular, it's no longer something that can be trademarked. When it comes to corporate brands, there's 4 different types. So there's the over brand, which is where you have a trademark plus a trademark. So think Apple iPod, Apple iPad, Apple iPhone, Apple iWatch. So they have iWatch as a trademark. and Apple as a trademark, and they always combine the two, and that's called overbranding. There's master brands where you have a trademark and a description of the services that follow that trademark. So Rogers is a telecommunications company, and they have Rogers High Speed, Rogers Home Phone, Rogers Family Plan. Very similar to Time Warner Cable, who has all three of those as well. You have the freestanding corporate brands, which is a single trademark. So Procter & Gamble operates all of their products under separate trademarks, and they don't necessarily include the Procter & Gamble trademark anywhere on their packaging and or their marketing. And then you have the endorsed brands, where you have the corporate name by or powered by another trademark. So Nabisco Ritz Crackers, Nabisco Oreos is the endorsed brand. So it's by Nabisco, they're the leader of that particular brand. So Marriott is a good example of the master brand and how they have their different product lines. Everything they do is something by Marriott or Marriott something. So you've got Marriott Hotels and Resorts or Residence Inn by Marriott, Courtyard by Marriott. Procter & Gamble, I apologize for the picture quality, for some reason didn't translate, but they operate all of their brands independently. Not everybody is aware of the number of brands that operate under that corporate umbrella. When I was first doing the research for this, I was really surprised that CoverGirl and Folgers were the same corporate empire, but yet they are. Most importantly, when it comes to a brand, it's important that you have a firm understanding that it is a combination of name and image, as well as a collection of customer experiences associated with that name and image. And those experiences do not always have to have anything to do with actually buying the product or service. A lot of time, those collection of experiences have to do with the marketing and advertising impressions that the company has left on the consumer in the marketplace. When you're putting together a brand, you want to make sure that it's going to be effective. You don't want to be the Super Bowl commercial that everybody forgot about or didn't pay attention to. So you want to make sure that your brand is going to deliver the message clearly. It's going to confirm credibility. It has some type of emotional connection to the consumer, has the capacity to motivate the buyer, and develop loyalty. So think about how your business could control and strengthen its brand through brand experience. If you strategically set levels of expectation through consistencies in customer service, how you acquire new customers, messaging, and believe it or not, voice tone and voicemail messages, email tones, all of those things play into those experiences. Any customer touch points, and marketing and communications. You want to make sure that your brand does not confuse the customer. And this comes into play a lot of times with customer names. In an attempt to be creative, if you don't lead the customer to water, they won't necessarily get there. So if your company name is so creative and doesn't tell its customer what it does, they're less likely to buy or have an understanding of what your brand stands for. So I think creative names are wonderful as long as it's clear to the customer what you're selling, and if it's not, that you have a really great tagline that takes care of that for you. It's also going to be ineffective if it doesn't connect to the consumer on an emotional level. And that connection can come through colors and imagery and music, but you want to have that connection. It's ineffective if it doesn't motivate the consumer or have any loyalty. When developing a brand, there are the 3 P's and an S. And I used to refer to it as 4 P's, and then I'm like, oh yeah, there's only 3. But there's brand position, brand promise, brand personality, and brand story. And if you go through the exercises of brand position, promise, personality, and story, before ever meeting with a graphic designer to come up with your logo, you will end up with a much better result that's designed to really fit what your brand is. The brand position is really about what it is that you do and communicating that to the customer. And that brand position can be done through the company name, it can be done through your tagline, it can be done through an image, it can be done through the color scheme. How it gets there isn't as important as the fact that it's there and it stays there. So some examples of brand position. If you look at Geico, Geico doesn't really tell you what they do in their company name, and so they have probably one of the most consistent taglines that's been in place for well over a decade. It is in every single advertisement. It is in whether it's print, social media, TV advertising, everywhere you go, their ads will have 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. That's their brand position. That's what they do. That's what's relative to the customer. GE recently branded themselves with imagination at work. And if you look at this particular ad, it's really designed to make you feel as though there is imagination at work. They've gone with a softer, quote-unquote, technology color, which is blue, by keeping all of the letters in lowercase. They're trying to appeal to a more youthful market, and they're trying to make you think that there is more to them than what they're known for. Joy is if you've never had them, they are a granola type bar. Obviously they're made with soy, and through their name they want you to think that they're a happy thing for you. I don't really have a preference either way, but I love their packaging in their colors, the box letters, the use of the company name are all letting you know kind of what you're buying right from the get-go. One of the things that you should be doing when you're looking at developing your brand position is kind of lay out where the competitors fall, very similar to this little grid here. So if you have, high quality, low price, high price, you'll notice some trends, at least in this picture, for different types of chocolate. The higher end the chocolate, the more elaborate the packaging. And that's true of the high quality, high price. As you get down in price and quality, the level of packaging comes down as well. So keep that in mind with what you're going to be selling. Where do you need to fit on this grid? Your brand promise is all about what you stand for as a company. It's what customers are going to say about you. It really should become the core foundation of your business. So most of you have really solid promises and core foundations in the nonprofits, and it's going to be just as important that you have this for your for-profit businesses as well. Now I have some examples, and I don't expect you to pick one of these examples, especially the first two. However, they're good examples because this is something that these businesses stand by. First and foremost, if you've ever stayed at a Hampton Inn, they have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and it is what they call an unconditional satisfaction guarantee. If you walk in the door and say, you know what, I really don't like your hair color, I don't want to pay for my room tonight, they will not charge you for your room. It is the core foundation on how they make decisions and how they put together their customer service programs, and it is something that they stand by as a corporation and as individual homeowners on a daily, hourly, and minute-by-minute basis. The key, if you're going to have a 100% satisfaction guarantee that you're going to offer customers, is that it has to be conditional. Or, I'm sorry, it has to be unconditional. The minute that you start to put conditions on the level of somebody's satisfaction, it becomes irrelevant and you almost look as though you're trying to scam your customers. Next up, we have Newman's Own. This is kind of something that will apply to many, if not all of you, since you're starting these for-profit businesses to fund the non-for-profit. It probably wouldn't help in your branding to let people know. Newman's Own runs on the brand of all profits for charity. It's 100% true. It's transparent. And a version of that will definitely apply to all of you. Now, from a little bit more fun perspective, take a look at some different types of promises. Red Bull's promise is it will give you wings. I can't believe it, but they're actually being sued for that because it doesn't actually give you wings. The purpose of the it will give you wings is it is supposed to give you the promise that it's an energy-inducing drink. My all-time favorite is Avis's We Try Harder. They never say what they try harder at, but they're going to try harder. And I think that that's great because it gives the impression that they're going to work really hard for you, and it never really says that that's what they're going to do. It also doesn't commit them to anything. In Papa John's, there's better ingredients, better pizza. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it's what they stand for. And in the eyes of their owner, they absolutely make it on a daily basis. So when you're putting together your brand, make sure that your promise is visible and apparent, especially because so many of you have great things that you can promise within what you're doing. The little known fact is that all brands have personalities just like people. And the personalities are traits that you want the consumer to associate with the organization. And they can really be anything. So common ones are honest, friendly, fun, focused, strong, smart. Typically, you want to have 4 to 6 personality traits per brand. And this is where some of the imagery related to your brand will come into play. So when you look at different keywords or personality traits associated with a brand, they have images that are considered common in culture. And when you apply those to your brand, they tend to take off or be understood a lot quicker with your customer base. So when you're looking at those brand personality points, you want to take a look at color, sound, feel, and that overall aesthetic and how it matches what you're doing. Dove has done a really good job of developing 2 key personality components to their brand. First is that they're real, and the second is that they're genuine. And they've really done this by eliminating the stick figure supermodel component to all of their advertising campaigns. They have gone to using everyday women that are everyday sizes, a variety of colors, and it's worked very well for them, specifically with younger demographics. Southwest, all of their advertising is all about fun, enjoyment, semi-professional. So when you look at their ads, just in their uniforms, if you fly much, you'll notice that when you get on a plane, the uniforms tend to be very stiff with most airlines. In Southwest, it's khakis and polos. They want comfort, fun, relaxed. It's a different atmosphere that you see than you see in their markets. IBM's new branding is really designed towards getting across the concept that they're innovative, that they're collaborative, and that they're smart. And they do that through a combination of their imagery as well as their wording. Healthy Choice, their branding is based on taking on quite a few trends. Most importantly is that what they're selling is healthy, i.e. healthy and healthy choice. They're trying to get across high quality through the imagery of the beautiful food on the package, as well as that it's good for you. And if you're selling to both men and women, it's okay to have dual personalities. These are both Roundup ads that appeared in publications for, one was in a woman's publication and the other was in a men's publication. The left side of the picture was the women's publication. And if you can see, the imagery is a little bit different. It's got glasses, it's got a book, it's a little bit less aggressive. And what researchers have found is that women, when they're looking for a solution, tend to respond better to images that have smart, strong, and methodical characteristics. So the smart has to do with the glasses. The book is about the methodical, because women are known for reading instructions, and that's not always a guarantee with men. And then the strong has to do with the muscles, but it's not over the top. Now, men as a demographic population have been researched to respond in looking for a solution that is strong, tough, and aggressive. Hence the size of the muscles, the smirk on the face, and the strangling of the weed. So if you're selling a product to both men and to women, it is possible to sell that same product with different imagery. Next up is your brand story. So this is about your organization's history. It could involve the personal history of some individuals that are key in developing this process. And this is something that adds value, adds credibility, and helps create that emotional connection to the brand. And so for all of you that are looking at putting together these for-profit businesses, I think it's going to be very important in your branding to bring in that organizational history, because you have such a long and rich history. It's also a very positive history for helping a very specific population set and providing a community service. As brands last, they changed. Companies rebrand on a regular basis, more so in the last 10 years than they have before that. And you can kind of see consistency in brand stories. So if you look at the BMW, which came out in the early 1900s, this is their brand story. These are the different brands that they've had through the years. I love the fact that they went after women in the 70s and 80s by putting in some pink. But other than that, there's an extreme level of brand consistency in their logo story. But there are some components of who that brand is within the story, especially when you put the logos in perspective based on time. In the early 1900s, it was very rare to have any logo be in color because color print was so expensive and not necessarily available everywhere in the world. So to have their initial logo have the blue, the white, the black, and the gold was very rare. Obviously, in the 70s and 80s, they tried to change it up, and they went back to who they were in shortly thereafter. In 2000, they changed their branding to have a little bit more of a metallic, innovative look. And when you compare that to Ford, who started off with the medicine bottle label, it's one of my favorites, and really has been the everyman's car that was their brand from the get-go, has pretty much maintained consistency once they got beyond the medicine bottle label. The color blue, the way the word Ford is spelled, its positioning within the circle. The only thing that's really changed is the color of blue, and that has to do more with trend of what's happening in the marketplace, and in more recent years, more of that metallic lint to appeal to the technology consumer. Apple's logos didn't start with the apple. It started with something else. It's kind of hard to see, and that's one of the reasons why they made the change. They went from rainbow coloring and including the name of the company to just a rainbow apple. If you'll notice that curve cutout in the apple that has stayed. Most people didn't realize why it was there, and it's because it originally fit the word apple. In most recent years, they've gone to solid color metallics to represent their brand. What I find very funny is that Microsoft, their Office logo, has changed quite a bit over the years, but they're almost back to the original logo. If you look at where they started and where they're going to launch the, or where Windows 8 came out to be, it's almost identical to their 1992 brand. Key moment in the Windows logo is it's a series of windows, and that part will probably never change. BP recently launched a new logo. I believe it was in the year 2013. It's the one on the bottom right. Most people don't know that BP stands for British Petroleum, hence the British flag in one of their logos. But their most recent logo was actually the most expensive logo to produce in the history of all things marketing. I believe it was almost $1 billion. And the whole purpose of the logo was to give the consumers the impression that they are green friendly, i.e. renewable energies, and that they are innovative. The only problem with that logo is it doesn't match the core of who the company is. And they've been using this innovative, responsible, green component to their marketing through their advertising and everything else. But most people haven't gotten past the spill in the Gulf of Mexico, at least in this country. So it hasn't been as effective as they would have liked. Had that not happened, it probably would have been a lot more effective. Pepsi, they rebrand their product every 5 to 6 years. And their rebranding concept is based on the fact that they believe that all soda drinkers are brand loyal by the age of 24. And so if you are brand loyal and you are either a Pepsi drinker or a Coke drinker by the age of 24, they are going to brand for the next generation that's coming behind you because you will buy their product regardless of what it looks like. That said, there are a couple of things that have stayed consistent about the Pepsi logo throughout the years in all of this rebranding. Part of it is the circle with the wavy blue and red has pretty much stayed the same. The size of how much that takes in the brand has fluctuated over the years, but that has been the consistency point. In contrast, Coke has rarely rebranded. Their big rebranding happened in the 1960s when they went to red and white. Shortly after the new Coke fiasco in the 80s, they did rebrand where it says Coca-Cola Classic. And in recent years, they have been minimizing the size of the word classic as people are starting to forget that that ever happened. So once you have your brand, it is possible to change your brand. It's just important that there's consistency in those changes, that you don't forget the core of who your brand is when you're making those modifications. And then once you have your brand, there needs to be significant consistency in how that's represented in the marketplace. So everything from your business name to the logos, the taglines, your website, promotional materials, and signage all have to have that same brand feel, whether it's the colors, the aesthetic, the layout. If your employees have uniforms, all of that needs to be consistent. And the brand associations, when you're developing that graphic design piece, pay special close attention to things like color and fonts. It's important that the colors that you pick will be true in small print, mid-size print, and large print. Think of a sign. And that the colors that you're picking are going to go after that aesthetic. If I'm looking to represent calm and gentle, I'm not going to pick neon yellow. Yet, if I'm looking to be in your face, youthful, I am going to pick neon yellow. When it comes to fonts, they have to be legible at 10 point, which is typically the font size that you see on many business cards, or lower. And it also has to be readable, legible, and brand representative in large font for signage. So you just want to make sure that you take a look at those things before you make your final selections. There are different color stories. So different colors are known for different things. These are kind of the color stories of some brands that are still with us and some that have gone away. The Woolworths brand is no longer with us, and Yellow Pages is probably on its way out. But you can see some trends. The blue line is really about technology, whether it's a social media mechanism for communication or how computers are powered, right? Facebook, Intel, Skype. A lot of businesses that are in that technology field are going with blues, silvers, and a metallic tint wherever possible. Older brands tend to be more in-your-face color-wise because color was relatively new when it was employed for their branding, and it's kind of hard to get away from it once you have it. The golden arches will always be golden because that's what they started as. You also need to be aware of how your brand is going to impact different aspects of your business. So it's going to impact customer perception through your customer service, product service qualities, corporate image, corporate responsibilities, and perceived value. That's all part of your brand and your imagery. It has to do with consumer memory and loyalty. Brand power is a lot stronger than most people think. If you just think of how you do your own grocery shopping, you know, unless you're buying the store brand and you're buying the name brand of products, many times it's the same thing. And it's the brand that we're buying, not necessarily the product. It does come into that purchase preference, and you just need to be aware of that. So once you have your brand, you want to make sure that it's in every piece of your marketing materials consistently. And again, that's logos, websites, printed materials, social networking, banners, trade shows, promotional items, signage, and merchandise. That your customer service is reflective of those brand values that you've outlined, that it's part of the corporate culture, and that it becomes part of your employee recruitment process as well. And so I'd like to end today with kind of a question. What is your brand going to say about you? So as you start to develop your brands, think of that. What is it going to say about you?